Hello, everyone. This is going to be a short video on the eclipse that's coming up tomorrow, September the 17th, 2024. Ever since I did the recordings for the cosmic weather, some people have asked about other recordings, and a couple of people have actually asked what I would say about the eclipse, and I'm happy to talk about it, which is what I'm going to do in this video today. This solar eclipse is going to happen during the full moon, and it will be with the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces. And there is a relationship with another couple of points, which are the north node and the south node. I'm actually going to show it in a chart here in just a little bit. And what we'll see is that the actual nodes are in different signs. They're going to be in Aries and in Libra. Most times you'll find that the eclipse and the nodes and the positioning of the sun and the moon will share signs, but in this case, they're going to be what's called out of sign. And again, I will demonstrate that with an actual look at a chart. But the question that's really, I guess, first and foremost is what is this particular eclipse going to mean? It is a partial lunar eclipse. It will be a supermoon because the moon will be close to the Earth, so it'll look very large in terms of that full moon effect. So what's going to happen is that it's going to highlight the themes of service and healing and emotional release since the sun's in Virgo and the moon is in Pisces. Virgo's energy is practical and it illuminates the importance of attending to our daily responsibilities and our sense of self-improvement. While Pisces, ruled by Neptune, and in this case it's going to be activated by the moon, encourages emotional surrender and spiritual insight. So this eclipse really will present an opportunity to find balance between practical concerns and your intuitive emotional needs. And then specifically for each of us, that's going to happen in certain areas of the chart that will affect certain areas of our life. And I'm going to show that through the US chart, how it's working on the mundane level, on a world level. And then I'm also going to show it in my chart, actually, where it's going to impact my chart. And then if you have, of course, an interest in finding that out in your own chart, certainly you could reach out to me and I'd be happy to work with you and share with you what it looks like the eclipse is going to do for your chart. And to also understand that you don't have to get the reading done at the day of the eclipse. The eclipse effect usually lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 months. So if you see this video and you're kind of interested in going, well, what does this eclipse mean for me? Then absolutely the reading can be done at any time in the next 2 to 4 months, and you would have an opportunity to know what the impact is, because it's also going to have a lasting effect even beyond that impact that you feel immediately. Now, what's interesting, as I said, is the north node is going to be in Aries and the south node is going to be in Libra. So this is going to emphasize a call to assert individual desires and embrace new beginnings. That's the Aries energy, while releasing old patterns of dependency or people pleasing, which is the Libra south node effect. So this alignment signals a time to step into personal power and independence, fostering either leadership or the courage to navigate changes in your life. The sun-moon opposition and the nodal axis will actually push us to harmonize the tension between independence and relationships, practicality and intuition, and really action versus reflection. So overall, this is going to be an invitation to align your practical everyday actions with a deeper emotional purpose that's guiding you forward in terms of establishing your self-reliance. Now, as I said, what I wanted to be able to do is show you what it looks like in terms of the chart, and we're going to start with the US chart. So I'm going to switch over here to a screen share and let you see the chart here. So what we have is the most common chart for the United States, which is set for July 4th, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And so what we're looking at here then is the natal chart of the United States. And then I've isolated the full moon and the nodes of the moon. And I do actually have a drawing tool that I can use to sort of explain what's happening here and where it's happening. So the sun on the day of the eclipse will be applying itself to the 10th house of the United States. And this house deals with prosperity, the public facing quality of the country, elements of what it produces in terms of even GDP, and gross domestic product would be a good example of the 10th house. In the natal chart for the United States, Neptune happens to be there. So there's sort of a spiritual path towards service, and that service is how the country actually expands and grows. Now, opposite, where the moon is going to appear in Pisces, that's going to be affecting the fourth house of the United States, which deals with the family unit, actually. And, trying to find this balance and address in many ways, probably what we're feeling is very much out of balance. Inflation would be a part of that effect. Also, the sense that um, it's hard for people right now to get homes because of what's happened with the inflation, with the rise of the interest rates, all of these things. So there's this question of rebalancing on a scale that's quite large. Now, along with that, we have the North Node that is applying to the fifth house of the US chart. And this deals with a number of different elements. It is children, it's creativity, it's also romance. This is I like to call this sometimes the house of the teenager. It's the house where you're really kind of focused in on what it is you want for yourself. And it's an energy that is playful in some ways. It's about leisure, but also it can be somewhat selfish, in fact. But the North Node energy is, how are we addressing as a country our individual wants and desires, the things that we feel like we would like to have, but also how are we addressing our situation with our families and our children? And then on the opposite side, we have that South Node, which is represented here by this upside down horseshoe, where the North Node is the right side up horseshoe. Although I guess you could say, if you're looking at it from another perspective, but anyway, it would be reversed. But I like to refer to the South Node as upside down and the North Node as right side up. And that South Node is in the 11th house, which deals with community. And so there's a need to release patterns in community and move towards new direction with Aries, which is independence and authenticity, but in a healthy way that is supportive. And so this is why, if you hear another astrologer speak of it, or I'm going to speak of it, is the idea that the eclipse is a situation where it's out of sign, or in an alternate sign, is that the North Node and the South Node are not sharing Virgo and Pisces. And so this particular eclipse is a little bit different because it's got additional elements of fire and air aligned with what the full moon represents. And then the full moon in and of itself is about reaching some sort of fruition or something that is coming to full realization. And since we're talking about the sun in Virgo, which is the sense of service, and the moon in Pisces, which is the intuition, and it's tied to the fourth and the 10th house, which in many ways are the houses when we talk about the provider and the caregiver. The provider would be the 10th house, the caregiver would be the fourth house. And so this particular eclipse is going to be bringing into focus, what do those things mean for this country at this particular time? How are we wrestling with that? And more importantly, if there is balance that needs to be achieved, what would that look like? And are we really severely out of balance? I would say, because of some of the other transits that I've talked about in the cosmic weather, we are. And I think most people can feel like they're holding their breath. And this would not be just a US phenomenon. I think this is a worldwide phenomenon, as we're waiting to see some of these transits that went into effect 8, 10, 12 years ago are reaching the end of their journey, and they're going to transit into new signs over, well, already this year, because Pluto will be permanently in Aquarius at the end of this year. Neptune will then be going into Aries. Uranus will eventually be going into Gemini. Chiron will eventually be going into Taurus. And that's all going to happen by 2027. So what is this particular eclipse asking us to think about in terms of being part of this society? It is this question of what is the evolving sense of service that we have to address publicly, that is then affecting also how we feel about what family represents for us in this country, as we're facing a lot of rapid change that is being brought about by changes in the economy, the impact of COVID, the arrival of AI, all of these things that are contributing to us having to face a rebalancing period that's quite significant. Now, this, of course, is on a larger scale. This is just a question of what are we dealing with at a large scale within the United States. But what about on a personal level? And so what I thought I would do is show you what it looks like with a personal chart, using my chart as the example. And so this full moon is going to impact me in the areas dealing with community, which is talking to all of you, as well as my fifth house, which is, what is it that I'm wanting that is affected by the moon being in Pisces and intuition. And also because I'm a father, I have a 19-year-old daughter. That's going to be in sort of in my mindset at this particular time. But also, where am I out of balance, and where do I need to address issues of balance? And if I'm in balance, what do I need to do to sustain that, both in terms of what I want at an emotional level, at a heart level, which is the moon in Pisces, and that I'm also trying to have my faith about in terms of being okay with where I am in my own journey. And then the sun shining in my 11th house in particular, it's shining right on top of these 2 points here, and it's closest to Uranus. This is the one I'm circling here, which does indicate looking at new ways to connect with the community, which I'm trying to do by doing videos like this, as well as being more engaged within my community where I'm currently living. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, I've gone and met with two women who own a new age business in the area. And I'm going to be actually doing readings in person, which I haven't done for quite some time. I used to do it all the time, but with COVID and a move that I made, I went fully remote and have not been as active in the public as I used to be, but that is shifting. And that's something that I am thinking about with this particular new moon and this particular eclipse. I've also made contact with another individual who actually books individuals like myself for events. And so that's going to be something new that may also play in. So I'm seeing how the astrology is also showing up in my life, and I'm also leaning into it. And so, if you were to decide to want to know how does this eclipse actually affect you and will lead to a shift, where does it occur in your chart? Now, and like I said, in my case, this is the fifth and the 11th house for the full moon. For the nodes, they're actually affecting my sixth house, which deals with my day-to-day work, and then my 12th house, which is my house of the inner self, but also I like to think of it as the house of spiritual purpose. And what you can see in my chart, or you may be able to notice, is that my north node by birth and my south node by birth are in the same sign as the transiting nodes are right now. So I'm definitely experiencing what is called a nodal return. My north node and the node that's transiting did return this year, and they are now separating because the nodes are moving clockwise, and they're moving away from where they were in the position. So this is a pretty significant year for me because I happen to have nodes in Aries and Libra, and they're being reactivated for me to look at and go, am I doing my work? Have I done my work? What do I need to do to complete my work? So tomorrow, in a ritualistic way, in an energetic way, once this eclipse really peaks, and in my area, it's going to happen in the evening around 10:34 p.m. And that's when it will activate it at its full moment. And so the idea is to think, what energetically do I want to put in place that will be aligned with the fifth house energy of my personal desires, how I have fun, my connection as a parent to my daughter, what it is that I want in terms of just the enjoyment of life. And then from a solar perspective, how am I shining in my community? What am I doing to be recognized? And Virgo to me is always about problem solving and practical energy. So what are the practical steps I can take to be helpful to the community? And this certainly would qualify producing another video. And then at the same time, the nodes, the stretch goal, at least until this node leaves Aries, is where do I need to face issues around going my own way and doing things that I know are right for me, and trusting that in doing them in a healthy way, that will be a benefit for all the people in my life. And then where do I have relationships that need to be released, or that I'm following patterns of unhealthy behavior in a Libraean sense, which is connecting with other people. So the Aries Libra energy is affecting all of us in the same way. It is still, Aries energy for you, just like it is for me, but is in a specific area for me, which is the sixth house, which is my day-to-day work, but also health. Sixth house is also a house of health. And I have been working on making adjustments to my health during this period of time, and that is to be expected. Also about releasing relationships, plural if necessary, and understanding what my pitfalls are. I always like to think of the South Node as like a blind spot. And when you're aware of it in astrology, you can kind of identify it. And it's very difficult to break out of because it's a very comfortable habit. And so I've been doing a lot of real soul searching during this period of what it means to be in relationship, how those relationships are formed, where I get into patterns that are not healthy because the South Node is to teach me to break out of those patterns and assert more of the North Node benefit. So I did not want to make this a particularly long video. I really did want to keep it somewhat brief just to give you a taste of what's going on in terms of this particular eclipse and generally how the eclipses do work. And they do bring about transformation energy and they do open a gateway energetically. And this particular one is going to be involving that Piscean energy, which the moon being in Pisces is very sensitive. And so it's going to be a sensitive energy that you're going to experience. So I do hope you find this potentially helpful. If you're interested in reaching out to me, you can find my website at www.blackunicorn.com. And unicorn is spelled Unikorn. And then also, I do like to respond by text. So if you would like to text me about an opportunity to work together, you can do so at 919-971-6818. And best of luck in your transition through this particular eclipse. And I hope it treats you well and you're able to find value in the experience of the energy.